Hello. The Divine Code reading for March 28th, pages 589 and 590. We are in the chapter Laws of Returning Stolen Objects and Restitution for Theft. Topic number 5. If one stole wood and made a vessel from it, or wool and dyed it, or a stone and carved it, these are considered permanent changes, and through these a thief acquires the stolen objects. By contrast, if a thief stole wooden planks and nailed them together to make a box, this is not considered a permanent change, since the planks can be returned to their original state by disassembling the box. So if a thief takes something and alters it in a way that it cannot be returned to its original state, that's considered turning it into a new object. And then it cannot, in the new object sense, be returned in a proper manner. So if he made a box by taking long planks of wood, sawing it, and then nailing it together in such a way that he's no longer, he can't return the plank of wood. That would be considered permanent change. But if he just simply took a bunch of chunks of wood and put it together in such a way where it can be pulled apart, and it would still be considered the same chunks of wood he began with, that would be a temporary change, and it could be returned as such. Likewise, if one stole yarn and made a garment from it, this is not considered a permanent change, since the yarn can be returned to its original state. So if it's a long piece of yarn, 100 feet, whatever long piece of yarn would be, he didn't cut the yarn. He didn't do anything to it. He didn't dye it or alter it in a permanent fashion. He just simply knitted it together into a garment or into something, but it can be pulled apart. Now, if a person cut a long piece of thread or yarn, cut it up and weaved it together in a manner that even if it was pulled apart, it would not be what the original item was, which would be like a spool of thread. Now it's a bunch of cut up pieces of thread. That would be a permanent change. So the whole question is whether or not what the new item is can be returned in the original manner. If one stole large beams and cut them into boards, or wood and cut them into large beams, this is considered a permanent change, since the name of the stolen object is changed and the thief acquires them. See Keshnef Mishnah and Lechem Mishnah on Rambam, Laws of Robbery 2:12, who question Rambam's opinion that if one makes threads into a garment, it is considered a permanent change. And again, the question is whether or not the threads can be returned in their original state. Rambam, Laws of Robbery 2:14, Shulchan Aruch. See Rambam, Laws of Robbery 2:14, and Shulchan Aruch Koshan Mishpat, chapter 360. So the whole question is who owns the new product. If the thief has acquired the new product, or if the original owner still owns the product, still has the acquisition over the product, which is important about the question of how to return it or what needs to be returned. If one stole a bar of metal and made vessels from it, he has not acquired them, since it is possible to melt the vessels and return the metal to the bar state. If, however, he stole a vessel and melted it, this is considered a permanent change. For even if it would be made back into a vessel in the form it had before, it is considered an entirely new item. See Rambam again in the laws of robbery, chapter 2, topics 11 and 12, and Shulchan Aruch, Kosher Mishpat, chapter 360. The same applies to any material with this property, such as glass or plastic. So if the person were to take a vessel, take a silver cup, and melt it down, it's no longer the silver cup. It can't, you know, if he took silver and formed a cup out of it, it can be melted back down into the original chunk of silver. If he takes the cup and makes if he takes the silver and makes a cup out of it, yeah, then it can be melted back down. But if he takes the cup and makes silver out of it, then it can no longer be the cup that it was. And even if he made a new cup that was identical to the original cup, it would be still considered a new cup. And therefore the thief has acquired the item, and the owner no longer has acquisition over the item. And the same occurs with other metals or items that can be melted down, such as glass or plastic. This is the general rule. A stolen item that is not considered to having undergone a permanent change unless having undergone a permanent change unless, first of all, it cannot be changed back into its former state as the item was before it was stolen. And number two, due to this change, the item received a new name. It cannot be changed back, even if it is a new name due to the change. The thief does not acquire it. So and that's a Torah, Shulchan Aruch, Kosher Mishpat, chapter 360, and Rima on the same Shulchan Aruch, Kosher Mishpat 360. So this whole thing about names is that within the Hebrew understanding, a name identifies what something is. Now, within different cultures, it may have, names are not as important, but within the Torah understanding, the name is essential, is the essence of the item. Therefore, when they're saying it changes its name, means it changes the essence of the item. The above applies only if the victim has not already despaired. If he has despaired, and then later finds a thief with a provisional change that brings with it a change of name, for example, making a vessel out of a stolen metal, then the thief acquires the changed object and only needs to return the value of the original stolen object to the victim. And based on the opinions on Tosafot and Rosh, that through the provisional change, that's a temporary change, along with the despair of the victim, the thief acquires the item, as explained in Shulchan Aruch, Kosher Mishpat 360. So if there's two, okay, so there's different variables here. If the owner has despaired, that means he's given up. He no longer expects to find the item. It was taken in the middle of the night. He has no idea who owns it, and he's given up on it, and he's verbally stated, just to take out all doubt, he's verbally stated to people that he doesn't expect to see his vessel again, his item again, his object. In that case, the thief can acquire it even through a temporary change, such as if the thief takes the boards. The thief takes boards out of the person's backyard in the middle of the night. Nobody knows who the thief is. And he takes the boards without cutting them. He makes a box. He makes something out of the boards. And the people, the next day, the owner says, "Oh, well, I guess I'll never see those boards again. He doesn't expect to see the boards again. And he stated he doesn't expect to see the boards again. If the boards are located, because a change had occurred. Okay, first of all, if no change had occurred, then the owners can reclaim the boards. If changes occur to the boards, they've been returned into a vessel, they're made into a box or something to that effect. But even though the box can be taken apart and given back to the owner, because he doesn't expect to see it again, he's lost ownership over those boards. So if he did not despair, if the next day, okay, the boards are taken in the middle of the night, nobody knows who took them, nobody knows where they are, and the thief turned them made a box out of them or something to that effect, without changing so he's made a temporary change to the boards, but not a permanent change. Then even though, if the owner says, I'm going to spend the next several days looking for those boards, and if anyone sees it, let me know, because I really want those boards back. If the owner of the boards doesn't give up, doesn't despair, which means relinquishing expectation of retrieving them. If he doesn't despair and he still hopes to find the boards, if he finds the boards with a temporary, that's a provisional change, then he can reclaim them. They still belong to him. Unlike the person that despaired and loses that ability to reclaim the provisionally changed object. Okay, so that's what's being explained here regarding if the person despairs. Topic number 6. If the stolen item was changed, if the stolen item was changed, but its name did not change at all, so the essence was not affected by the change of the object, the thief does not acquire it. Even if the thief does not return, even if the item does not return to its previous state. For example, if a thief stole a large beams and then cut them down into small beams, since they still have the name of beams, this did not change. The thief does not acquire them. Without a complete change of the name, and it's Rabbi Akiva Aligar on Shulchan Aruch Koshan Mishpat, chapter 353, based on Tosafot on Tractate Sukkah 30b. Without a complete change of name, a permanent change has not occurred, and the item is considered still intact. In this case, therefore, even if the victim despaired, the thief must return the item. And this means that the item was changed. The question is whether or not the essence of the item is changed, and that can be based to some extent. It's if the use of the beams, if the intended use of the beams require them to be a certain length, they require the beams to be 10 feet long, and the thief has cut them down to 3 feet, 3.5 feet long, and it depends upon whether or not the beams are still usable in the same way. So in one case, if he was planning to build a house and he needed beams that were 10 feet long to reach the span, and now they're 3 feet long, they've changed their essence. Whereas the same beams, if they intend to use it for some other purpose, such as a sukkah, they're going to make a sukkah, and they don't need 10-foot long beams. But they have 10-foot long beams, but they can get away with 3-foot long beams for what they're doing. Then it did not change the essence of the beams, even though it's the exact same beams and the exact same change made. It depends on a variety of factors. So if the name is 10-foot beams, and that has a quality necessary for what the person's going to use it for, then cutting it down would change the essence of the beams. If they're beams that do not depend upon that, they're beams that are more than 2 feet long, is the name of the beam. And it changes from 10 feet to 3 feet. Well, they're still within the essence of beams that are more than 2 feet long. So they would still serve a purpose, and their name, their essence hasn't changed. So it's a little tricky in this regard. And we need to identify clearly as to what the essence, the name of the object is. Topic number 7. Even though we have explained that through a permanent change, the item becomes acquired by the thief, and he need only pay back the value of the item and not the item itself. However, it is forbidden for the thief to change the item he stole in order to acquire it, or even for some other reason, since in doing so he adds to his theft. With this action, the thief has fully removed the item from the jurisdiction of the previous owner, which is an additional theft. Even those types of changes by which the item does not become acquired by the thief, for which examples were given above, it is forbidden for the thief to make, are forbidden for the thief to make. This applies just as it is forbidden for the thief to use his item he stole, as explained below in chapter 3. Rather, it is an obligation for the thief to return the stolen item intact to its owner. Shulchan Aruch Harav, Laws of Robbery, topic 10. Explains that it is forbidden for another person to buy the stolen item from the thief. Since doing so, the buyer completely removes the original owner's jurisdiction over the item. How much more so is it forbidden for the thief himself to make a permanent change in the item, since this is complete theft, as explained in Neviot Ha-Mishpat 3:34-5 and see footnote 55 above. So this is a continuation in the footnote 55, that apparently there are different degrees of theft, and the taking of the item and keeping it in its original state, in which case it still belongs to the owner, is one degree of theft. And taking it and changing the item to make it fully acquire, loss of, could cause the owner loss of acquisition. To change the acquisition of the item, either by selling it to a third party, which takes it totally out of something that's retrievable by the owner, or changing the essence of the item, such as making a permanent change of the item. These are things that take the ownership away from the original owner and are a higher degree of theft. And so that would be a continuation of the theft. It would be an increase of the severity of the theft. It is unclear whether a Gentile thief is liable to a separate sentence of capital punishment for making this permanent change. And this is the big question that goes back to, that's been in this chapter, starting with footnote 55, is whether or not there's more than one punishment that can be given out for an action. Now, this would be a second action, so So would it be a separate sentence of capital punishment? The practical difference occurs if, for example, A, there are no witnesses to the theft itself, but there are witnesses who know that it's a stolen object and they saw the person, the thief, making a change in it in order to acquire it. So if there's no there's no witnesses, and therefore a court case against the thief. Nobody saw the person take the boards out of the owner's backyard, but they see someone the next day cutting the boards up to make a table. So therefore, the person is acquiring the boards. If he knew that they're stolen boards, the owner's name's written on the side of the boards. If he knows that they're someone else's boards, and he says, "Listen, you can't prove I stole these boards, but I know they're stolen, and I'm going to cut them up into, I'm going to cut them up for the purpose of acquiring them." Would that cutting up for the purpose of acquiring them be something that could be tried in a court as theft? That's the question that's being done here, which would also be if a person knows that an item is stolen and he purchases the item from the original thief. Does that second person liable for theft if he knows it's stolen and he's buying it and he knows that by buying it or by acquiring it, he's taking it out of the jurisdiction of the original owner? Would that third party be liable in court? Or the original act of theft is committed in error. The same applies if he buys a stolen item from a thief before the victim despairs, and knowing that it is stolen, the buyer makes a permanent change in the item to remove it from the original owner's jurisdiction. Based on the explanation of footnote 1, the buyer or the thief in situations A or B mentioned here would not be liable to capital punishment just for making the change in the stolen item, since it does not cause any additional monetary loss to the victim beyond the value that it was stolen at the time of theft. So the question is whether or not there's a secondary punishment by the continual action. And it seems that the Divine Code is arguing here that the answer would be no, there would not be. It's not a separate thing because it's not causing additional loss to the owner, additional monetary loss, because the owner, by the change of the item, the change that causes the acquisition to the original owner to lose acquisition of the item does not cause the owner additional monetary damage. He's already lost the board. Say the boards are worth $10. He's already lost the board, and now he wants them back. But now the boards have been cut up. Did he lose any additional monetary damage? No, he's going to get reimbursed $10 for the boards. So the additional change would not cause there to be a separate liability to the person that is doing the additional change. And then the question is who has to pay back the $10, which is which would be another separate issue. Thank you.